Kyle is probably expecting this, right? He's probably watching this going, okay, Jake's going to give away one of my jerseys in the background as payback. I'm going bigger because I can and I want to. So this is what we're going to do, because I know if I look directly into this camera and ask the people to hit that like button, if we can get 1,000 likes, I'm going to give away Kyle's YouTube plaque. They send us the plaque for 100,000 subscribers. I'm going to make him autograph that bad boy. Then I'm going to sign it when I'm with him at the Fantasy Football Expo in Ohio, and we're going to ship it to somebody. So hit that like button if you want to see Kyle lose his YouTube plaque. He's not expecting this.
Son of a...
He's probably...
Yo. Analytics, off the chain, all the channels, not the same. Jake and Kyle, you know the name. Headline Nation, we running the game.
Yo, what is going on, Headliner Nation? Kyle back with the Fantasy Headliners to continue my volume versus efficiency video series, and today is all about tight ends, the football kind. But first off, y'all, my YouTube plaque, are you kidding me? Y'all hit the like button for that? The video that I did to give away Jake's Chubb jersey is only at like 750 likes. Y'all want my YouTube plaque and not an autographed Nick Chubb jersey? Well, I can't give it away until y'all go hit the like button. So you need to hit the like button here, and you need to go back to that video, which you can see running back volume or efficiency rather. Nick Chubb's on the thumbnail. Go hit the like button over there so I can give away Jake's Chubb jersey, because now I got to give away my YouTube plaque. But I'm going to be giving away a free draft guide potentially in this video, so make sure you stay tuned because I'll be talking about that one a little bit later on. The draft guide is available for pre-order right now, though, so if you head to our website down in the description, thefantasyheadliners.com, you can pre-order it right now, and if for some reason you do win, we'll just end up refunding you the money that you paid out. So you might as well pre-order it now, and then if you win, you're golden, baby. But we got to move on to tight ends, and we got to talk a little bit about volume with tight ends today. Now, any good tight end can receive a lot of volume. I should really think about how I say things from now on. Tight ends that get a lot of volume can... Nope, I'm all over the place. Let's just head into the statistics. Volume stats, targets, receptions, receiving yards, receiving touchdowns. If all of this looks familiar to you, well, that would be because same stats from my wide receiver videos. So we're going to be using the same thing for wide receivers and tight ends, talking about the volume and the efficiency. In this video, all about the volume. So I've got 16 tight ends. And again, I just didn't take the top tight ends from each category. I took 16 different tight ends, kind of all sprinkled along the lines of different statistics and things like that, so we could really get a true look at the difference here. Again, if I just take the top however many tight ends, we're not going to get a whole lot of differentiation between all the statistics, and then at that point it's not going to help us determine volume and efficiency. So that is why we have some different names on there. But let's start off with targets. Out of the 16 players that I chose, Mark Andrews obviously led the way with 149 targets. Then Kelce. Zach Ertz might be a little bit of a surprise coming in at number 3. He kind of got lost in the shuffle after his transition to Arizona last year. He'll be in Arizona again, but it felt like people just kind of forgot about him last year after that trade. Kyle Pitts, the outstanding rookie with 107. Great numbers last year, but frustrating at times because he just didn't have the upside that a lot of people expected. Mike Gesicki with 106, Dalton Schultz, and then Kittle, Waller, Cole Kmet, Noah Fant, Rob Gronkowski, TJ Hawkinson, Patty Freiermuth, Hunter Henry, Dallas Goedert, if you're feeling fancy, and then Dawson Knox. Now, as far as reception goes, kind of the same thing here. Mark Andrews again leading the way, followed by Kelce and Schultz, Ertz, Gesicki. Again, Gesicki for every tight end, essentially outside the top tight ends, are going to be frustrating. And I feel like last year was frustrating for every single tight end not named Mark Andrews and Travis Kelce. I mean, guys were missing time. They were inconsistent. Dalton Schultz was a guy that, again, maybe kind of overlooked by some people heading into the season, but played very, very well and ended up becoming a little bit better of a consistency value down the stretch for owners. So he did very well last year. But then you got Ertz, again, Gesicki, Kittle, Pitts, Noah Fant, TJ Hawkinson, Cole Kmet, Freiermuth, Goddard, Waller, Gronk, Henry, and then Knox. And we'll talk about this when we get to the efficiency video, but if you're kind of surprised about where Knox is falling right now on the volume stats here, he was very efficient last year. And again, that's where we'll kind of see some of the difference in these numbers from everybody. Mark Andrews led the way in receiving yards as well. Again, no surprise here. This video is essentially like the wide receiver video. Cooper Kupp led every single volume category for wide receivers. Well, congratulations. Mark Andrews is the Cooper Kupp of tight ends. Travis Kelce over 1,100 yards. Kyle Pitts. So only 3 tight ends last year, bringing in over 1,000 receiving yards. And Pitts ended up being one of those, the most receiving yards ever for a rookie tight end. George Kittle, Dallas Goedert, Dalton Schultz, Rob Gronkowski, Gesicki, Ertz, Fant, Waller, Kmet, Henry, Knox, Hawkinson, and Freiermuth. Something that you're going to see too as we move over to efficiency and we talk a little bit more about some of these guys. Hawkinson and Freiermuth, volume-wise, weren't too bad in several areas in terms of like your targets and your receptions and things like that. But man, their lack of efficiency in those offenses, it was tough to watch. There was really no big plays. Their receiving yards per reception were way down. They just weren't making big enough impacts on a play-by-play basis for you to really utilize them at the tight end position consistently. However, there could be some things changing for both of those guys going into this season, which could, be good and bad. They're both going to TJ Hawkinson's going to have the same quarterback, obviously with Jared Goff, but Pat Freiermuth will have a different quarterback, being either Mitchell Trubisky or Kenny Pickett. So one of those guys will be the one leading the way for Patty Freiermuth, and hopefully that will help. I'm just going to say it over and over again. Hopefully it comes to fruition. Help him receive, bring some of those numbers in the receiving categories back up. Big Ben, obviously, towards the end of his career last year, just didn't have it anymore. And because of that, they just weren't able to push the ball down the field. Lots of little dink and dunk plays, which can be good for tight ends. But again, it doesn't really lead to that high upside. TJ Hawkinson is going to have some new weapons around him this year. Obviously, we know that the big play guy, Jameson Williams, who they traded up for in the first round to draft, is going to be healthy at some point, hopefully this season. And then DJ Chark, the big play guy that was also added to help stretch the field and bring this offense kind of into the 21st century in terms of being able to put explosive plays on the board a little bit more often. So you've got those guys. DeAndre Swift, hopefully he's healthy all year. Because of that, there could be guys taking away from TJ Hawkinson. Now, we saw that Goff tried to make it work at times with Hawkinson, but it just wasn't always there. Will it be there this season? Dawson Knox, kind of the same thing, a little bit of a change around him in terms of some of the weapons that you see. I was really hoping that they would just hand over the reins to him and really let him go this season, but they have brought in, like O.J. Howard, and they brought in some other weapons to kind of replace the Cole Beasley, Emmanuel Sanders tandem that they had last year that was on and off the field at times. But they wanted to really just continue to put weapons into the playmaking room for Josh Allen. So Dawson Knox, again, if efficiency is there for him this season, that could be good, but there could be some issues with volume once again. Let's move on to receiving touchdowns. Mark Andrews, again, leading the way, tied with Travis Kelce. Hunter Henry, a guy that volume-wise was frustrating last year because he didn't receive a ton of volume, but he was there in terms of touchdowns, and we'll talk about why in a second. Dawson Knox also coming in with 9. Schultz right behind him with 8. Freiermuth with 7. Kittle and Gronk both with 6. Ertz with 5. Goddard, Fant, Hawkinson with 4. Gesicki and Waller with 2. Pitts with 1. Cole Kmet unable to find the end zone last season. Hopefully, now that is a growing trend this year with Cole Kmet. Like I just talked about with the other guys, why we could potentially see, some issues this year in terms of really being able to say, hey, let's rank them higher, or hey, let's put them higher. Those concerns just showed up a second ago, but those don't show up for Cole Kmet. In fact, at times last season, in the game plan, it looked like Justin Fields was really trying to rely on Cole Kmet as his go-to guy, and Matt Nagy just wasn't having it. Matt Nagy's game plan last year was absolutely disgusting, awful, gross, let's just say there was less volume in that offense last year than on Jake's head. I'm sorry, Jake. I had to get you for giving away the YouTube video. But all of those things considered, Cole Kmet could be on the way to a breakout season. Him and Justin Fields tried to have that rapport last year, and you did see it at times. They didn't add any top weapons. Darnell Mooney will still be the number one guy. Allen Robinson obviously gone, and they didn't add any top receiving options that are like, oh man, this is going to be the guy. They don't have that. Cole Kmet could really be looking towards a much, much better season this year, which would be welcome because he absolutely deserved it. So if you're wanting to win a 2022 fantasy football draft guide by us here at the Fantasy Headliners, we need two different things. Number one, you got to hit that like button. I need 650 likes on the video to give away a draft guide. Number two, in the comments down below, I need you to put out hashtag breakout TE. Hashtag breakout TE for tight end, and then put who your candidate is this year for breakout tight ends. So again, hashtag breakout TE, and then who your candidate is for the breakout tight end this season in 2022. Once this video gets to 650 likes, I'm going to pick somebody who put breakout TE down in the comments. I'm going to go ahead and pick that person to win a draft guide from us here this season. Now, let's move on to an area that I mentioned just a second ago when it came to a guy by the name of Hunter Henry. Let's talk a little bit about the red zone and what the red zone meant for volume last season. Because last year, again, Mark Andrews continues to lead the way. Red zone targets, Zach Ertz shows up. And then here we are with Hunter Henry and Dawson Knox. Now, both of these guys, in terms of just their overall volume this season, a little bit on the lower side, but both of them ended up being decent tight ends to utilize if you were in a pinch, if you had a bye week, an injury, something like that, because of how much work they got in the red zone. Their targets in the red zone, 26 apiece, third in the league. Both of these guys were big time playmakers for their quarterbacks, Mac Jones and Josh Allen, in the red zone. And that really helped propel their value and make them fantasy viable assets on a weekly basis. Whereas on the lower end, TJ Hawkinson, Jared Goff pulled a Matt Ryan last year. His best weapon just disappeared in the red zone. Hopefully that changes a little bit this year. What about red zone receptions? Dawson Knox still up there, number 2 overall with 18 receptions in the red zone. Now, Hunter Henry did drop a little bit with 14. He wasn't quite up there with Dawson Knox the way he was in targets. But still, again, Hunter Henry was looked at when they got to the red zone last year. And I think that's something that we need to track with tight ends this year. That's something that we need to keep an eye on with tight ends. Because, again, outside of, a top few guys where it's like, okay, these are going to be legit playmakers in their offense. These are guys that we need to have some shares of. These are guys that we can trust on a weekly basis. Outside of those guys, there's really nobody where we can say, hey, these are guys that we need to have, right? At that point, it's kind of about throwing darts. Who do you think the next breakout is going to be? Things of that nature. But I think the one area that we need to turn to is tight ends that perform in the red zone. Because even if they don't get a ton of volume all over the field, we need to be grabbing guys that are getting a lot of work in the red zone. If we can do that, then I think at that point we're at least putting ourselves in a situation where we're getting guys that have high upside potential for TDs every single week. And when you have that, things get a little bit easier to kind of figure out in the tight end landscape. Now, for actual touchdowns in the red zone, Mark Andrews, Dawson Knox, Hunter Henry led the way with 9 coming in the red zone. Schultz had 8. Kelce and Freiermuth had 7. Gronk at 6. Kittle at 5. Now, a majority of tight ends, they're going to get their touchdowns in the red zone, okay? Because the tight ends aren't going to be like the same big play guys that you would see with the wide receivers. So red zone touchdowns are going to normally be the same as what their overall touchdowns would be. However, there are a couple of guys who have the ability to break those plays outside of that 20-yard mark. So it's always important to try and see who those guys could be for big playability. But again, when you're looking at who to grab after the top guys are off the board, red zone touchdowns aren't really something that you would take a look at, but you will take a look at just overall red zone volume. And again, touchdowns, receptions, targets, all of those things inside the red zone is something we really want to consider when it comes to what those next guys are. So in terms of just overall, who were the best this year volume-wise? Who were the guys that when it came to volume gave us the best chance at the tight end position every single week? No surprise, again, Mark Andrews coming in number 1 overall there with a score of 1 because he was number 1 in all categories. Next up, Travis Kelce, absolutely nothing there to complain about. We knew that. Dalton Schultz at number 3, 4.57. Now, again, this is a guy that this season, it could even see a bigger step forward than what we saw last year. I love Dalton Schultz this year. There's no more Amari Cooper. They don't, Michael Gallup will probably be back close to the beginning of the year, but how is he? He's going to be 100% right away. Dak Prescott showed last year that Dalton Schultz was his go-to guy. Now, I've had some Cowboys fans try to argue that with me and say that he was not. I don't see it. I even went back and looked at the numbers, looked at the tape. Dalton Schultz was the guy for Dak Prescott. Dak Prescott was looking towards Schultz a majority of the time. Him and Amari Cooper were kind of 1 and 2 in that area. If you watch the volume video for wide receivers, you saw it with CeeDee Lamb. CeeDee Lamb last season just didn't have a great amount of volume. Now, hopefully that goes up. But Schultz is the guy for Dak Prescott, and hopefully that continues this year, because if it does, we're looking at Schultz kind of propelling himself up into that area of tight ends that we can utilize consistently with no worries whatsoever. I'm talking like a 1B situation behind Mark Andrews, Travis Kelce, George Kittle, and the likes of those. Dalton Schultz really being right behind them. I really like Schultz this year. George Kittle obviously dealt with some injuries last year, so he could end up being a little bit higher on the volume come this year if he can stay healthy. Zach Ertz, Dawson Knox, still in some of those receiving categories, was able to propel himself up in volume even though he was really low in other areas. Again, being looked at in the red zone the way he did and scoring the way he did helped push him up. Gesicki at number 7, probably kind of a surprise for some of you, because Gesicki, more weeks than not last year, was not fantasy viable. And more than likely this year, if I had to guess, won't be this year either. And that's just because the addition of Tyreek Hill and how good Jalen Waddle are, I just don't see Gesicki being a guy. Now, volume-wise, I don't love it this year. Efficiency-wise, if they're getting themselves into situations where they're down, I could see Gesicki getting a lot of garbage time because, with Hill and Waddle having so much attention to them, Gesicki's a guy that could just sit down underneath and just take little dump-offs, little 5-10-yard passes from Tua just over and over and over. I could realistically see that happening with Gesicki. So I don't love him, but he could be a decent garbage time tight end next year in situations where they're facing better teams. Hunter Henry at number 8, touchdowns helping to keep him up there. Gronkowski, Kyle Pitts, as good as he was in volume last year, just disappearing in the red zone and absolutely no touchdowns really hurt his average here. Pat Freiermuth, maybe we see a little bit of a step forward with a new quarterback there. However, they did bring in Pickens. They've got some other playmakers added this year. Noah Fant to Seattle, that could end up being an issue. Noah Fant in Seattle could end up being an issue. He is really a guy that I'm kind of out on this year because he just never really exploded in Denver. Even Albert, are you okay? He was a guy that was getting just as many reps as Noah Fant. So to be in on Noah Fant, I think we're getting a little too cute with it this year, and it's not just something I like. Now, maybe him and Drew Lock have a connection, both coming over from Denver, and have that ability to match up a little bit better, but I don't want to risk it with guys like Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf there. And then obviously them getting back to running the football quite a bit. Dallas Goedert. Now, he's really low here, right? Really low. Number 13 overall in volume. But ladies and gentlemen, come back for the efficiency video because we're going to talk about why Dallas Goedert if you're fancy, is one of my favorite tight ends this year. Darren Waller, of course, those injuries really hurting him this year, or last season. The lack of touchdowns hurting him here too. TJ Hawkinson, injuries, lack of touchdowns, just lack of overall volume at times. And then Cole Kmet at number 16, who I still think is a good breakout candidate for this year. But don't forget, we broke down all the averages here of overall volume, but we're going to do it with efficiency after this. So make sure that you do come back. Make sure that you get here for the next video dropping. If you're watching this when it comes out, it'll be dropping the day after. If you're watching this afterwards, it's a video that's probably going to be right after this one in case we have some sort of like breaking news or something that pops up. So make sure that you tune in to the efficiency video as well, because we're going to be breaking down some really nice things over there to, again, try to help you unlock the tight end position. As the tight end whisperer, dubbed by Headliner Nation here, I feel that it is in my duty to consistently help you find those tight ends, the football kind, on a weekly basis. Hit the like button for me. Again, 650 likes, and somebody down in the comments who comments with hashtag #BreakoutTE and then their breakout tight end candidate is going to win themselves a draft guide this year. If you're new here, you've got to hit the subscribe button. Tons of content already dropping this early in the offseason. You're not going to want to miss any of it. And then again, let me know down in the comments below with your comment about who your breakout tight end is going to be. I'm going to get out of here now, though. Everybody stay safe and healthy out there in Headliner Nation, and I will catch you all on the next episode of the Fantasy Headliners.
Analytics off the chain, other channels not the same. Jake and Kyle, you know the name. Headliner Nation, we running the game. Y'all stuck on third down. Your content's plain Jane. Headliners on top now. We gonna move and change. Podcast off the rip. Draft guide, so legit. Fantasy world, our game tight. You know we about that Chubb life. Stuck in a rut and you need some motivation. Head to the channel for this Headliner Nation. I'm a headliner.